Things don't always go according to plan. Sometimes you need to do a workaround. Or sometimes you want to change your plan so drastically that nobody could have ever predicted what you're doing. In this video, I'm going to show you how the Air Force uses DDEs, demand data exchanges, and demand history adjustments to take care of both of those situations. One area of emphasis in the Air Force, starting back in 2012, has been the increased use of demand history adjustments, or DHAs. When a part is not available and the depot does not submit an order for the part, instead they execute a workaround, a demand record is not created, so DLA does not understand what happened. This impacts the demand history that DLA relies on to forecast future demands and thus plan future inventory. So the workarounds that maintenance executes can thus impede the improvement of support to these operations. By finding ways to work around the problem and not reporting their needs or the workarounds, the maintenance activities mask the extent of the problem and do not provide DLA with the information it needs to better plan part support. In practical terms, what this means is when maintenance does something that is not in the ordinary standard way they did things, is going to affect DLA's supply. And by sweeping under the rug, I don't mean that anybody's doing this on purpose. It's a lack of knowledge across the board, a lack of communication between agencies that are causing this. One example of what I'm talking about is, let's pretend that you had a radio that needed a circuit card, a resistor, and a capacitor. Normally, maintenance would repair them all and they'd have all the parts. But this time, they didn't have the circuit card, but they did have the capacitor and the resistor. So they go to fix the radio, they pull the capacitor out, they replace it, they pull the resistor out, they replace it. According to their technical manual, they're supposed to replace the circuit card as well, but they can't because they have no circuit cards in supply. What do? Well, maybe they can get a workaround. They can get engineering to do a waiver. They could cannibalize from another radio that has a good circuit card and they can use that one. Any of these workarounds are not going to put a demand on supply, and it's not going to show up in DLA's history. So this is the workaround that a DHA is perfect for. Now imagine we take this a step further. We take this one step further by saying the supervisor of that maintenance shop decides to shut down the maintenance line altogether. There will be no more fixing radios because every radio that comes through the shop has to have a new circuit card. Therefore, let's not fix radios until circuit cards are stocked. Well, now what happens is you also don't have any demand pattern for changing out the capacitor or the resistor. So finally, weeks later, months later, the circuit cards come in, DLA provides them, and you go to fix radios again. Well and behold, you run out of capacitors and resistors. And the reason why? DLA says, well, you didn't have a demand on them. There was no history of you using them because you went weeks and months without having that repair line up. You see how this can be a circular problem? So this is why DHAs are very important. DHAs allow the depot to submit a demand record that gets integrated into an item's demand history and thus into DLA demand planning. From the viewpoint of a DLA demand planner, the DHAs are transparent, being treated as any other demand. It's important to understand the differences between a DHA and a DDE. A DDE stands for Demand Data Exchange. The Demand Data Exchange is when you know that the future is going to deviate from what you've been normally doing in the past. A good example is when you fly a certain amount of hours on a jet, let's say 10,000 hours. Typically, you'd fly 10,000 hours and you'd break 2 radios and 1 CPU, whatever that might be. But now let's say the plan changed and we're going to fly 20,000 hours. So then you might expect double the amount of broken parts. And therefore, you need to replenish those parts with stock that historically hasn't been shown to be in need. So that's when you submit a DDE. Recognizing the need to be proactive in this regard, the Air Force developed a standardized DDE generation and submission practices and codified them in a new Air Force instruction back in 2012. This included the establishment of a Planning for DLA Managed Consumables Flight, PDMC. You will hear PDMC all across the Air Force. They're going to centrally coordinate the process across the Air Force for submitting demand data exchanges. The PDMC flight gathers information on projected changes in demand from the Air Force's maintenance and supply communities. So they talk to the loggies and to the program managers, and they figure out, is there something that's going to deviate from the past? They serve as a single point of contact to coordinate and submit DDEs to the DLA. I hope this video was useful, and if it was, leave a comment below, let me know how, and also subscribe. That'll help me grow my channel and continue creating videos like this.